He's on the Make It Right, Call Kyle Right hotline. Ladies and gentlemen, Danny Cunningham, Cleveland Magazine, 92.3 The Fan, the Inside Shot on Substack. Hello, Danny.
Good morning, guys. How are you?
I'm well. Are we overrating the Cavs' struggles because the rest of the East is struggling?
I don't know if it's overrating the Cavs' struggles because of that, but I do think that the shape the rest of the Eastern Conference is in should kind of make us give the Cavs a little bit more slack, if that makes sense. Looking up and down this conference, and this is one of the things I did yesterday, the 4 teams at the top of the conference, I don't think anybody is scared of playing in the postseason, and I realize that is the same thing a lot of people said about the Cavs last year when they won 64 games is, well, nobody's scared of them when the playoffs arrive, and then we see them lose in the second round. But if you look at Detroit, are you scared of playing them in the postseason? I don't think so. Are you scared of playing this version of the Boston Celtics?
I think our bigs might be a little scared to play Detroit in the postseason.
I don't think they are.
I saw him get pushed around last time I saw him.
Ooh.
I don't really think that they necessarily did. I think that the Cavs lost that game in part because Lonzo Ball was a minus 19 in 9 minutes. And I think in the other game they played Detroit, they won by 30 in a game that the final score might have been closer than that, but I saw the Cavs absolutely whip the Pistons in that game. And I think a big part of it, too, the 4 teams at the top of the East have been the 4 healthiest teams in the Eastern Conference, too. The Boston Celtics have had Jason Tatum out the entire year. They've had fewer than, I believe, 15 missed games by the rest of the roster with injuries this year. Those things all matter. It doesn't certainly excuse the Cavs. They should be so much better than they are, and they have underachieved to really significant margins. But I also think because of where the rest of the East is at, this is not a team that should be buried either.
Yeah, and I think that's foolish to bury them. I do think, and I asked this question at the start of the year, just kind of looking at the landscape of the Eastern Conference, is there a chance the Cavs are worse than they were last year and could still get to the NBA Finals? And I still say yes on both of those. I do think right now there's not a lot of favorable numbers when it comes to what I'm about to say, which is this is the worst team performance-wise of a Donovan Mitchell team. All the teams he's ever been on, this one statistically is the worst by various metrics, and I do wonder how he's feeling about that. Is he's been our Iron Man this year. He's played in, I think, 40 of our 44 games, and the whole point was, as he gets further in his career, especially with the Cavs, that he would be shouldering less of a load, but here we are, he's had to do just as much.
Yeah, I think that is, and to me, that is a reflection of what Evan Mobley has been offensively so far this year. Because with the Darius Garland stuff, him always having to, he was never going to come back and immediately be awesome. This was always going to be a ramp up for him. Obviously, the injury to the other foot is not something that you would have liked, but I think that Evan Mobley should have been able to shoulder more of the load offensively so far this year. And I think that has been certainly one of the more disappointing aspects of the Cavs is that when they tried to give him more offensive responsibility at the start of the season, it didn't go very well. And that's a big part of the reason why Donovan has had to carry more of the load, and the fact that various guys are having career low shooting seasons from beyond the arc is another part of it. And just basically everything aside from how good Donovan has been, and he has been fantastic this year, everything else has not gone according to plan, and that's why the Cavs are in this position right now.
Yeah, Danny Cunningham joining us on the Make It Right, Call Kyle Right hotline. How much criticism should be weighed at Kenny Atkinson? What do you think is warranted through the first half of the season? Because there's a lot of times where, I'll explain this to you, Danny, where I've kind of gone back and forth with some people going, he was the coach of the year last year, won 64 games. You fired a coach before. He's doing well up in Detroit now. Is it just the coach's fault? I just can't keep saying it's the coach's fault then, can I?
I think there should be some criticism on Kenny, but I don't think that this is entirely his fault. I don't think Kenny can go out there and make shots for guys, and Kenny can't go out there and grab rebounds or get defensive stops. At a certain point, especially once you already fire a coach with this core, it's on the players to go out and do it. And we've seen what this Cavs team can look like when they're fully healthy. And I do think, while I understand in the postseason they finished in the exact same spot they did under JB, I just think that the context matters there. And I think last year's Cavs team had a higher ceiling than any version of the Cavs with JB Bickerstaff was going to have. And I actually think, the ceiling on this year's Cavs team is still pretty high, despite the fact that they're sitting in, I believe, 7th in the East because of tiebreakers right now, or because of, win percentage being slightly behind the two teams they're virtually tied with. So I think some of it's on Kenny. Like, could he have done a better job with the Evan Mobley stuff at the start of the year? Has he tried to be a little bit too experimental with lineups? Like, I think so. I mean, the Cavs have had 24 different starting lineups this year. Part of that is because of injuries, but part of that too is because he's tried a lot of different things, and a lot of those different things haven't necessarily worked. I think one of the things that has really hurt this team is the lack of consistency. A big part of that is on injuries, but part of that too is on how experimental Kenny has been so far this year.
Do you think that's interesting? You said Evan Mobley at the beginning of the year. Do you think that he's confused, Evan?
No, I think that when you give somebody a different role and then you try to, and I think it's a similar thing with DeAndre Hunter too. I'm not saying that is why those guys have struggled entirely, but I do wonder if it's part of it. Like, Evan at the start of the season was basically told, hey, you need to be able to just go out there and carry the offense for these stretches without Donovan Mitchell, and we are going to give you the basketball in spots that we've not given you the basketball before, and we're just going to say, hey, go score points for us. And that is not who Evan has been throughout his career, and that obviously didn't work. Like, one of the things that I think could have made more sense, and this is so easy to say in hindsight, but one of the things that I thought could have made more sense is, why don't you start Evan the same exact place where he finished last year, right? Like, I think we can all agree that he took steps forward offensively last year, especially in the second half of the season, and then add on from that, like build up off of that. And if it costs you some wins because your bench isn't very good when you're without Darius and when you're without Max and some other guys that have been injured, then so be it. But I think that would have been a better way to handle Evan Mobley at the start of the season. And instead, it didn't go like that. And he struggled mightily offensively. And I do wonder about his confidence on that end of the floor at certain parts of the season. Now, I do think he's been much better lately. But part of that is I think he's been in a role that looks a lot more similar to what he looked like near the end of last season offensively in terms of what he was doing. So I just think that those things matter when we talk about, why has Evan Mobley been underwhelming so far this season. I just think that's part of the conversation. At the end of the day, Evan needs to be better. Evan is an all-NBA player that should be able to do more than he was capable of doing offensively early on in the season. He needs to be better, and that's why I can't just sit here and say, oh, yes, this is all Kenny Atkinson's fault. I think that'd be silly.
Danny Cunningham joining us here. Should I then give up on the idea of Evan Mobley being a unicorn?
I think it's important to say that development is not linear here, but I also don't think Evan is ever going to go out there and be the caliber of Nikola Jokic offensively. I don't think that Evan Mobley is going to be a number one on the offensive end of the floor at any point in his career. I would be surprised if that's the case. He's somebody that is always going to have an extremely high floor because he is incredibly impressive defensively. For as underwhelming at times as he has felt offensively, he, to me, has taken a step forward defensively, even after winning Defensive Player of the Year. Like, the last 3 or 4 weeks, what he's done defensively is outstanding. But I do think that he is not, because he doesn't have a tight enough handle, because the jump shot hasn't come along or matched the level that it was at last year so far, it's hard for me to envision him being the first option offensively. Now, if you pair him with somebody like Donovan Mitchell, can he get to the point where he's the second option offensively? I think he better be able to do that. But if part of your definition of unicorn is, well, he's also going to be the number one offensive option on a team that wins 55 games and can win the finals, then I do think that I don't want to say that ship has sailed, but it's hard for me to see that happening at this point.
All right, how concerned should all of us be? We're talking to Danny Cunningham right now on the hotline about Darius Garland's toe. Last year, he had a similar injury. I think the grade was different, and it was the other foot. But here we go again now with a new injury, different foot, but another great toe. So what can you tell us? And are we going to be sitting here playoff time wondering again whether he can go or not go?
I think anytime you hear the words great toe sprain with Darius Garland, you're going to be concerned, right? Like, because of what happened last year. And I do think that this is an injury that is not as significant as the one that he had last year. And I also think it's important to denote, like, that injury that he had that has still affected him through this season, quite frankly, that needed surgery in June, started in the regular season. And Darius Garland played through it in the regular season. I think that this is the Cavs handling things in a different way. Even if this one is not as significant, giving him 2 weeks off, which is essentially, I imagine, what's going to happen here, giving him 2 weeks off to totally rest and recover and heal, as opposed to having him play through it or allowing him to play through it, I think is the right decision for the Cavs, because they know that they need a healthy version of Darius Garland in the playoffs. Like, this is offensively, they have not been the same. I think they really miss Darius when he's not out there, because the quality of shots that they create is not the same when he's off the floor versus when he's on the floor. And I think that if you watch the playoffs last year, like, they very clearly missed a guy who could penetrate defenses and handle the basketball. And when they don't have Darius Garland, they still don't have that, because Lonzo Ball has not been good enough. So I do think that it's a concerning thing. Anytime Darius gets hurt with his injury history, it's going to be a concerning thing. But I do look at this and say the Cavs are at least handling this the right way by giving him some time off and hopefully allowing it to heal all the way before he's back in game action.
Why do we call it a great toe and not a big toe?
I don't know. I really don't know. I mean, like, that, I guess, is the technical term for it, but it never just call it a big toe. Like, who cares?
I called it a big toe for 38 years of my life, and then last year it was called a great toe.
Yeah, and then everybody makes the joke, oh, it's not so great if it's hurt all the time.
It's fair. That's fair, Danny.
I was going to do salad.
Big toe.
I was going to do salad game.
And I do think we have to change we can't call this turf toe anymore. Like, it's a painful injury. It is deserving of a more serious name than turf toe.
I will admit, when I first saw Dion have it before the Super Bowl, I was like, turf toe? What's the big deal? Just running your toe. And then later on, he had to have the toe amputated. That's a very serious injury.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. Yeah, go ahead, Danny. Sorry.
No, it's a very serious injury. It's very painful. It needs a new name.
Toe talk on the fan.
As of today, Cavs are the 7th seed. Now, we just had that 2-game series on the road in Philly, so certainly we liked the way that looked, and all of a sudden all the Philly people were like, we do not match up well against the Cavs. Second game, Darius Garland didn't even play, and yet they still couldn't defend us on the perimeter, which was interesting to see. So have you kind of started to line up teams that you would, maybe I'm being presumptuous, but I do think we're going to make the playoffs, the teams that you think we match up well against and the teams we don't match up well against, and what are you doing with Boston, as it looks like Jason Tatum is going to be coming back?
So I'll start with the Boston thing, because I really don't know what to do with them. Like, they, as I mentioned earlier, have been incredibly healthy throughout the season. And Jaylen Brown has been somebody that, if the season ended right now, would no doubt about it be on MVP ballots. Like, he has been outstanding, and I think that Cavs fans, while it might be upset that Donovan Mitchell's not starting the All-Star game, Jaylen Brown is not one of the guys you should have an issue with starting ahead of Donovan in that game. So he's been awesome, but the Tatum stuff for me almost throws a wrench in it. Like, I wonder if they're going to be better or worse with whatever version of Jason Tatum they'd be getting this season, because Jason Tatum at his peak is an awesome basketball player. He's probably a top 10 player in the game. But is that who you were getting this year if you're the Celtics? Like, I question whether or not it's the right idea for them to bring him back this year coming off of that torn Achilles, because this team has things going so well. And I don't necessarily think that they're a team that's going to win the title. And I do think that they're going to go through a stretch where they have 2 or 3 bad weeks and fall down the standings, because that's what everyone in the Eastern Conference, maybe other than Detroit, is going to do. And as I mentioned, they've been incredibly healthy aside from Tatum all year long. I haven't necessarily thought a ton about playoff matchups, in part because some of these games that the Cavs have played against the teams, like, the Cavs have just been so far away from who they are. Like the 3 games against Toronto. In none of those games did the Cavs have anything that resembled what we expect the Cavs to have in terms of personnel in the playoffs. And they lost all 3 games. Should I take that as, well, the Raptors would really handle the Cavs in the postseason? I don't necessarily think so. The Sixers, they've not been the same team. I do think have to look a little bit at context surrounding these games. Like the first game the Cavs played against Philly was on the second night of a back-to-back. When they played on Wednesday of last week, it was the 3rd game in 4 nights for the Sixers. Like, those things do matter. I think that the Cavs match up better in the postseason than it probably feels like right now against a lot of the teams that they could play in the playoffs. But with everything as close as it is in the Eastern Conference, like, I believe the Cavs are 3 games out of the number 2 seed right now in the East, which sounds absurd to say given how underwhelming the season has been. But they really could take on one of like 8 teams in the first round or 5 different teams in the second round. So I haven't put a ton of thought into it yet.
Danny, thank you very much for the time. Where can they find you on Substack?
So you got it, guys. At the Inside Shot on Substack is where you can read everything I write, and Locked on Cavs is where you can listen to me talk about this team every day.
Outstanding as always. Danny, thank you very much for the time.
Thanks for having me, guys.
The great Danny Cunningham on the Make It Right, Call Kyle Wright hotline. I am willing to give up on the unicorn status for Evan Mobley. Chet Holmgren was my Waterloo.
That was it?
Yeah. I held out, and then I saw Chet Holmgren one-on-one, and I went, okay, fine. I give up. I'm done.
I think we just, at this point, we know Evan Mobley can dominate a game defensively and offensively as a role player who just finishes around the rim. He can do that and be really good, but then you also know other guys have to step up because Evan's not capable of like, hey, Evan, we need a 25 to 30 point night tonight. We need you to pick up. Maybe Donovan's going to be doubled. We need you to really go out there and get some buckets. I don't think you can do that or count on that right now.